All right, Happy New Year to everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Lisa Partida with Home Again LA, and today we have our good friend Tom Fuentes from Bank of Hope back and ready to present to you guys. Today's topic is going to be your spending and savings plan. So I'll go ahead and pass it along to Tom.
Thanks, Lisa. So, for our first workshop of the new year, we have your spending and savings plan, which is probably a good topic to start the year with after all of the holiday shopping, I presume that we all did. But this is actually a short topic. So, let's get into it. So, section one is going to be making a monthly spending and savings plan. What you're going to get as far as the takeaway. So we're going to discuss how to create a spending and savings plan, and then we'll talk about ways to increase and decrease expenses. So that's our key takeaway. Let's go ahead and get into it. So, whoops, there we go. A spending and savings plan helps you compare your income and expenses, understand where your money is going, and allows you to make adjustments to guide how you use money so that you can meet your goals. Some people may call this a budget, understandably, but we're going to use the phrase spending and savings plan. So it's clear that we're planning for how we spend our money and also how we save our money. I also like the phrase spending and savings plan a little bit better than budget because, as I already mentioned, we're going to imply that using this kind of thinking is going to allow us to make the proper adjustments necessary. Um, Depending on our situation and how the year goes, how the months, years go, right? You can adjust a budget too, but there allows for a little bit more flexibility and room when thinking about a savings and spending plan. So anyway, a spending and savings plan bring together probably the most two important money topics that we have, income and expenses. So income is money that you receive, but a lot of people just think, okay, it's the money I get from my job, right? But really, it's any earned income that you have. It could be income from assets and investments that you might have. It could be from public benefits or entitlements that pay money, other benefits or other entitlements that primarily offer benefits other than money as well. Other income sources, such as maybe money from gifts. We just wrapped up the holidays. Maybe you received a gift card as a gift. Maybe you received cash as a gift. Maybe your birthday was in December and you got money in a birthday card. The point being is that any money that comes in is money that we need to consider as income because it's money that you're not going to spend out of your regular paycheck, we'll say. But if there's other sources of income too, it can come in the form of child support, alimony, things like that. But I basically just want you to understand it's money coming in. But then on the other side, the complete opposite is expenses, right? So expenses are how you use your income, right? And it could be from savings, sharing, spending. So thinking about your income and expenses is a stressful topic, especially if you're worried about making ends meet, of course. We're going to talk about and practice putting information about income and expenses into an overall monthly plan that you're going to be able to do after the workshop through the participant guide. That process can empower you to make choices and make changes and make adjustments as needed through the weeks, through the months, through the years. In the long run, that can help you reduce stress about money. So, in the apply it section of the participant guide, making my spending and savings plan, it's on page 4 of the participant guide. This is essentially what it's going to look like when you get there. But this is the steps that we're going to take to essentially fill out and create your spending and savings plan. Okay. Um, and essentially, what you're going to do um, is this is basically a blank sheet that you're going to work from. And you're going to need a few pieces of information. And we'll go over this in the next slide, but this is essentially what you're going to see to start building that out. So, this blank spending and savings plan is going to have three sections. And I don't have what all the sections look like, but it's going to be my net income, it's going to be my expenses, and then a comparison of my total net income and my total expenses. We'll go over what those mean, okay? But essentially, the steps that you're going to take to fill this out is that you're going to complete the column called past monthly amount. You're going to complete the column called plan monthly amount for whatever month it is, and you're going to fill in the month. And then you're going to compare your total net income and your total expenses, which we'll cover in a minute. If needed, you're going to make changes to the income and the expenses you have in the planned monthly amount column so that your income covers your expenses. Okay. You may have to do some math to get the monthly amounts if you receive income or pay expenses on a schedule other than monthly. So this can be applicable to whatever your circumstances are. But in order to even go to that part of the participant guide and fill that section out, I want to talk about the first part of the focus, which is your net income. Okay, so let's talk about what these sections look like. All right, so the three sections. So the first part focuses on your net income. Okay, so net income is your income after taxes and other deductions. Using the net income means that we don't include taxes as an expense. Okay. The second part focuses on your expenses. The third part is a comparison of your total net income and your total expenses to see if they're in alignment. And by aligned, we mean does your income cover your expenses? There's detailed instructions for filling it out in the participant guide. So let me verbally describe since I don't have what it looks like in the participant guide so you can get an idea. So first, complete the past monthly amount column to record your net income and your expenses based on the past months. This will be the most accurate if your records are reflecting at least 1 month of income and expenses. Next, you're going to complete the planned monthly amount column. It includes a space for you to write which month you're planning to fill in. Fill in income and expenses using the past monthly amount column as a reminder of your recent income and expenses. You don't want to just copy those amounts. Think about whether you need to make any adjustments to either income or expenses for the last month. For example, you may want to put more money into your emergency fund, for example. Um, you may also want to cut spending on things like groceries and household supplies to make the change. So this is what I meant by being able to make adjustments. You may also be able to cut out expenses altogether, which is really useful in filling this out. Let me give you an example. Say you're still paying for cable. Okay, you've got Spectrum cable or whatever, or maybe you have YouTube TV. Um, After seeing how much that costs, you may want to bring that expense down by either shopping around for a cheaper television plan or streaming option, right? Or cut it out altogether when you realize I'm spending 70, 85 bucks a month and I don't want to pay for that anymore. So it's a very useful thing to fill out the uh, the spending plan so that you can see where you can cut some things out. Okay, and then finally, compare your total net income and your total expenses. So this will help you see if your income covers your expenses. If not, you'll want to take a look ways to either adjust the income or adjust the expenses. You may have to do some math to get monthly amounts if you're spending a savings plan. If you receive income and expenses rather on a schedule other than monthly, but there's a table in the participant guide that can help you with that. So, so what does this all mean when you compare? So when you compare your total net income and your total expenses, you'll have three possible outcomes. If the difference you calculate in the comparison of my total net income and my total expenses section is zero, your income is the same as your expenses. You should have just enough income to cover it. So meaning you're at a stalemate. You have just enough. A positive number, however, you have more income than your expenses, so you should have enough income to cover them. If you have a negative number, you have more expenses than income. So you would likely not have enough income to cover your expenses. You'll need to increase your income or decrease your expenses, or unfortunately, incur a debt to make it possible to pay for your expenses. So you can create your own spending and savings plan using that apply it section after the workshop. But I really think that this is going to be super useful for you so that you can see. I'm a visual learner, so it helps when I write things out, what your income and expenses actually are. And it can help you adjust your financial goals so that you can understand what you want your savings plan to uh, essentially be for the most part, right? Um, uh, Things that you're going to see in the spending and savings plan that I don't think I have a visual for. Let me see. No, I don't have a visual for, but let me verbally explain it. Under the things of net income, you're going to have things like my job. And if you have multiple job, there's three sections in the guide. So it's like job one, job two, job three. So where you can put your income. If you get any public benefits, there's a section for that. There's also a section for interest, dividends, child support, alimony, gifts, things like that. And then you can tabulate your total net income. And then there's going to be things of my expenses. Now, this is why I wanted to verbally say what this looks like. Under the expenses are going to be your savings. So you're going to have things like an emergency fund. You're going to have things like charitable contributions. But then you're going to go into things that you would normally associate with expenses, which would be like your rent or your mortgage payment, property taxes, utilities, uh, cell phone bill, internet, uh, streaming services, car payment, so on and so forth. So that's what that section looks like. But it also breaks that further. Whether you use public transportation, what your health insurance is like. Do you have student loan payments? Do you have credit card payments? Do you have childcare? What's your grocery bill? How much do you spend on and eating out? Do you have pet insurance? Things like that. And then there's sections for other if there's things that aren't listed. You're going to get your total expenses, and then you're going to compare the two. Okay. I just wanted you to understand that there's a whole bunch of different things that could be included in there. Okay. Now that you would go through that exercise and understand what the savings and spending plan is, there's a scenario here that you can also check out in the participant guide that goes over a scenario with Shelly and Walter. Shelley and Walter recently um, moved to a new city 8 months ago. They both have jobs. Walter also does freelance work on the weekends to bring in some extra cash. Their total net income is 3,100 per month. They're trying to save money toward an emergency fund, but their savings account is actually decreasing each month. That's because they're withdrawing money to cover expenses. They also would like to have money set aside to help pay for their granddaughter's college fund. So, um, check out this spending and savings plan. But this is going to give you a little bit more practice after you've created your own. And I don't think we have theirs. Do we have theirs? No, we don't have their plan. But essentially, it's the same scenario as when you filled yours out. Remember, I told you that their net income's 3,100. Well, you're going to see it pre-filled in their spending plan. Their their jobs, they have $2,000. Their second job, they have 1,000, and then self-employment income of 100 equals 3,100. So anyway, you can go through and you can see their plan. Now, the reason you want to go through this is you want to see a scenario in which their total expenses exceed their income and where they're going to need to make adjustments in the end, right? So you can fill this out in the participant guide so that you can see so that you can see where they need to make the appropriate adjustments. Okay. Um, but in that scenario too, there's another kind of thing to take away. So there's several ways to actively use the spending and savings plan throughout the month. And that's what I wanted to talk about as far as those adjustments that you can make on a weekly, monthly, or yearly basis, right? And the way that you do this is by doing a log. And basically, it can be done daily, weekly, monthly. And it's to track spending and savings activities and then uh, ideas that you can add to keep track of them. So I think we only have the daily one here. Well, we have a visual representation here, but this is what it's going to look like in the participant guide. Let's talk about what this would look like as far as logging and making adjustments. So when we talk about daily ideas, recording your savings and spending, right? Um, I don't know about you, but this is something funny I saw on Reddit yesterday. I saw this post. Uh, this guy has an annual tradition. He says that he saves all of his In-N-Out receipts for the whole year. And then when the year's over, he takes all those receipts and he adds up how many visits to In-N-Out he did, how much the total cost was, what his average spend was on each visit, what his go-to meal was. It was a fascinating Reddit post, but I'm bringing this up for a purpose. He was able to track on an annual basis what he spent on at In-N-Out alone. So the idea is that you could actually save your receipts for a lot of other things, and it can give you an idea of what you're using your income for. It doesn't need to be specific to In-N-Out. It can be anything, right? But I just thought it was interesting, like, oh my God. So in the end, this guy ended up spending $663 and change for the whole year at In-N-Out. That was spent over 43 visits. So he went to In-N-Out 43 times last year, which means there's only 52 weeks in the year. So it means like he's almost going every week,
Every other week, probably.
every other week. But the idea here is that like you can
Oh, wait,
use
every week.
almost every week, right?
Yeah, you're
Like
right.
you,
Never mind.
it's crazy. But you can essentially kind of use that idea on whether or not you want to track your things daily or weekly for the most part, right? You can do so by saving the receipts. You can do so by what I do is I look at my statements at the end of the month. It's just whatever you want to do for your plan, right? Or if you want to do something cool like this guy did and pick something out, like In-N-Out, or maybe you identify after doing your savings and spending plan that you go to um, Bed Bath and or I'm only thinking about it because I got a candle for Christmas this year from what's the one in the mall?
Bed Bath and Beyond?
Bed Bath and Beyond.
Yeah.
Like maybe you end up going to Bed Bath and Beyond a lot. And anyway, you can track this stuff is all I'm saying, right? Um, but you can do it daily, you can do it weekly, right? So let's talk about one weekly idea, right? Putting limits on spending using the envelope system. I think most people have heard of this one. Labeling envelopes with categories of spending that limit what you're going to spend for the week or for the month. So, for example, since I'm stuck on fast food right now, you get an envelope, you write on it eating out or takeout, and then you put in a fixed amount of money in the envelope, and that's what you're allotted for the month. And you can't go above that. Or you get an envelope and you write on it groceries or groceries and household spending. You put a fixed amount of money in it. Or, hey, modern times, okay? Maybe you're not a cash person. What you could do is you could put a slip of paper in the envelope that has the dollar amount, right? And you're not allowed to go over that. So you can use kind of like that and adjust the envelope system that usually involve putting like cash in an envelope so that you wouldn't overspend uh, based on that system that you would use. I still am a cash person, so I might be able to use that. But the idea is that you're putting in a fixed amount so that you don't overspend on what it is that you've allotted for in that category. And you can come up with any category that you want, but it's probably better to use categories of things that you spend money on when you're going out. Like you wouldn't do an envelope category for something like your rent. That's a fixed dollar amount that comes out. You wouldn't do an envelope for your utilities or for things like that because, that's a fixed amount. I'm thinking more of things that have variable fluctuating amounts that you can make adjustments to. And the other nice thing about this system is that it's tangible, meaning that you're physically getting cash out of the envelope and it's tangible. Like for some reason, when I have cash, it's more real to me than the statement that I see when I open up the app on my phone and I go on to Chase and I go, I just see a dollar amount of $662. But that's just me. But anyway, that's kind of the idea. And then there's establishing a weekly money check-in. So you set aside a convenient time of the day or week with it could be you where you're the only one in your household that manages the money, or something that I think is could be cool if you want to pass down some financial literacy to the kids in the house or whatever, you could always do it during dinner or if you have a regular family check-in where it's something that you can actively talk about with the family. I don't know. You could do the plan however you see fit, right? But it's a cool thing to do so that you can make adjustments to the expenses that are considered variable, like eating out. Um, yeah. Well, okay, so let's talk about conducting the monthly review. So review records of spending by, we already talked about receipts, right? But also go on apps. Um, let's pivot from away from In-N-Out and go to Shake Shack. I could go on the Shake Shack app on my phone and look at all the orders that I've done, and I could do it that way. Or I can pull my statement on my Chase account and they categorize it. Thank God. Thank you, Chase, for having the little pie chart that tells me what I spend on all the categories, whether it be travel, like if I stayed at a hotel, or eating out, or Walmart, household supplies, or whatever it may be. But you can do that monthly review, right? By either looking at receipts, looking at the apps that you use, or pulling statements, just to do a monthly check-in of what the spending is on a monthly basis rather than the weekly basis, right? And again, this is something that you can do throughout the year. You can do an annual recap at the end. Anyway, I'm bringing this up for a couple of reasons. One, to bring it back home personally for me. So when we pay our mortgage, I don't have an impound account. So meaning that when I pay the bank my mortgage bill, it's only for interest and for my principal. Property taxes are paid separately. So my wife and I always have to plan to prepare for taxes at twice a year, once in the middle of the year, once at the end of the year. So we have to put money in a special savings account to make sure that we can cover our property taxes. So that's why it's important that we usually do a check-in together to know where we're at. And luckily, my wife's got it all set up. She has it. She sends over like $100 a month into a special account. That's her property tax account. But you can see why check-ins are important, right? Now, as far as adjustments go too, let's pivot back into income and expenses real quick. So there's only two ways to get more money. Okay. You can either increase income or you can decrease expenses for the most part, right? Um, so you may be able to increase your income to cover your expenses, but how do we do this, right? So some activities may provide more income once or occasionally, meaning that, look, I can have a garage sale if I can't cover my expenses. I can go gather up items in the house and put them on eBay for sale, which I do, by the way. Hey, um, sometimes you need some extra cash and I got something laying around I don't use anymore. Or you can go and say, hi, boss, or whatever, can I get a promotion? I don't know. These are ways to increase income, right? Um, Another way is to get another job, so a second or a part-time job. Or you can monetize a hobby. Maybe you're a skilled baker and you want to sell wedding cakes on the side, or cupcakes or cake pops or whatever, right? Something that I bring up a little bit throughout our workshops for the year is that I not so much now because it takes a lot of time, but I do frequent eBay to sell items. And for a very long time, I was buying and selling sports cards. So that was a little thing I did on the side when I had time, right? Um, but maybe you do want to get that part-time job. Maybe you want to do Uber or Uber Eats on the side or something like that. But I'm just bringing this up because there's only like a handful of ways to increase income to bring more money in. And unfortunately, a lot of them, other than maybe that if you're up for a promotion, well, no, even the promotion, I was going to say, a lot of these ideas are going to end up being more time consuming to you, right? You have to take time out to do a garage sale. You have to take time out to sell things on eBay. You have to take time out to get a second job. You have to take time out to go back to school. I almost was going to say getting a promotion wouldn't take more time, but with a promotion usually comes more responsibility. The whole point is that, look, these are the only real ways that you can increase income, okay? The other way to increase income, however, is to decrease expenses, right? Um, so to decrease expenses, you need to think carefully about what your needs, wants, and obligations are. And remember, those are like the key terms: needs, wants, obligations. What's needs? Needs are things that you must have to live. Wants are things that you desire, right? But you can live without. Obligations are the debts that you have, either because you borrowed money, or you maybe pay child support or something like that. Okay. Um, Once you've identified those things, you need to think about three strategies. Conserve what you can get cheaper or use less of. And I always use the same thing, which is like I can go to Target and I can buy Old Spice body wash for $8 a bottle, or I can go to the dollar store and buy Suave for $1.95. A dollar, how much is the dollar store now? $1.25. So that's conserve. Or that's also kind of adjust too, right? But adjust in the sense of what can you renegotiate over a long period of time. Let me give you an example. Say you have a credit card that has a really high interest rate and you're having trouble making those payments. Call your bank and try to renegotiate your interest rate down. Look, the bank wants their money and they would rather have you pay them on a monthly basis than for them to um, either like foreclose on your house or to take away your car because you can't pay your car loan. Look, the idea is that the bank will work with you under most circumstances, not all the time, not all the time. But you may have to renegotiate items that you can't pay. And in the past, look, a long time ago, I had a credit card that was like 27, 25% interest at the time. It was hard to make payments. And they lowered that interest rate a little bit to help me out. So that might be something that's possible, renegotiation of terms of things. I had to do this with student loan. You may have to do it with a student loan. You just may have to call customer service, customer support, and it doesn't hurt to ask. But then you need to identify those items that you can eliminate altogether or right away. Maybe if you end up doing the equivalent of something like that guy who saved all of his In-N-Out receipts at the end of the year, he saw he spent $663. He might go, "What am I doing? That is so much money I could be spending on something else." And I would certainly argue that even cutting his In-N-Out visits in half to 22 visits, he could do a lot more and save that other $300 that would be in his pocket. I would definitely classify In-N-Out as a want and not a need. Sometimes it's a need because it's a treat, but that's a lot, right? But maybe there's other things that you can eliminate or do without too. Maybe, um, like I recently saw that a lot of the streaming apps went up in price due to especially like HBO. Like they want like 20 bucks a month now. Are you kidding? I saw a Black Friday deal though. I got it. Thank God I locked it in for 2.99. I think it's $2.99 a month for like a year.
Really?
Yeah, I saw it like in like for Black Friday.
Ah,
But
where did you find
but
that?
right? But otherwise, you're spending like for the Disney, Hulu, HBO package, it's like 24.99 a month or something like that.
Yeah.
Um, so maybe that's something that you can eliminate. I don't know, but some of the streaming apps are ridiculous now. And maybe after you do your spending plan and you see what you're spending on like some subscriptions, maybe you have the Uber Eats subscription, whatever. The point being is that if you can eliminate an expense that's in the want category, it's money that goes back into your pocket that you can spend on something else, like if you can't cover your expenses. But yeah, the app thing just comes up in my mind because I finally got hit with that first HBO charge on my credit card that I forgot about. I was like, what is $2.99? And I forgot I signed up for it. And then I saw they're like, um, and then if you want like the package that's like the premiere package that has like surround sound and 4K or whatever, dude, they want even more money. It's like, I don't know. I don't know
Yep.
how we afford um Prime Video, Apple TV, Netflix Stars, Paramount Plus, Disney, Hulu, blah, 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 blah. It's like people were cutting the cord and getting rid of cable as an alternative to save money, and now it's like we're back to spending $200 a month.
Hmm.
Um, but maybe it's something that you can eliminate and live without. I don't know. Cut back on TV. It's all a part
Oh
of,
no, we don't
right?
want to cut back on TV.
Right? It's all a part of making adjustments,
Yeah.
right? Um, but only that's the only way to bring in more income is to cut the expenses, unfortunately. That's just the God's honest truth of it. Um, and now also this also kind of ties in, and this is not part of the workshop, but it reminds me of it. I heard something interesting at the start of the new year. I'm not much of a New Year's resolutions person at all, to be quite honest, but this kind of ties into like, okay, if you can eliminate a want, like cut back on TV a little bit. I heard this interesting quote, which was because a lot of people have affirmations and New Year's resolutions that they like to do. Again, that's not my thing, but I think this is useful. The quote from this person was like, okay, I want to do something new for the new year, so I'm gonna do a new hobby, or I'm gonna take up exercise. Like, I'm going to start doing weightlifting an hour a day, or I'm going to start doing cardio. I'm going to do the elliptical 45 minutes a day. But here's the interesting quote that this person made. In order to pick something up, you have to put something down, meaning that more than likely, you don't have the extra time or ability to pick up that new thing that you want to do because psychologically, you're going to be unwilling to take away time or money or whatever from something else to take it on. So just remember that. And that's what I'm going to try to remember throughout this year, which is in order to pick something up, you're going to have to put something down. So if you want to take up cardio or playing basketball or just do or hiking, more than likely you may have to cut back TV time because you're going to have to take away from something essentially. Anyway, this is again Walter's and Shelley's in the participant guide, making adjustments to their plan after we understand those things. But that brings us to the sections closed. We only have one more section, very fast. But the idea is that using a monthly and spending and savings plan is going to help guide you and help you identify um, ways to make adjustments. Because again, there's only a handful of ways to increase income, and it has to do with getting more income in or decreasing expenses, as we talked about. So let's talk about our final section when money is short and how to prioritize which bills to pay if we run into the circumstance. Okay, so how does it happen? So, what are some reasons people might not have enough money? Well, there's a whole heck of a lot of reasons. Um, One could be an unexpected absence from work. You might have a health issue that lands you in the hospital. You may be out for a month or two. Do you have enough PTO to cover that, right? You could have a natural disaster occur. We're coming up on the anniversary of the LA wildfires, right? Do you have insurance to cover a loss like that? You may need to do an unexpected repair with all the rain that we've had recently. Leaky roof. I talked to my mom the other day, and they've got a leak in the living room, so they have to have the roofer come out. Do you have money set aside to cover those types of expenses? You had the unfortunate circumstance of going through a divorce, maybe. I don't know. The idea here is that there are a whole host of reasons of why we run short on money. Hey, it could be self-induced. Maybe I overspent and my credit card bill was more than it normally is because I bought a little bit more, or I bought for more people for the holidays than I usually do as well. So, unexpected costs. Um, there's a whole bunch of things, right? But the idea is then, what can I do? When your income is less than usual or you've had an unexpected expense, your regular your regular bills and living expenses don't stop, right? Because that's not reality. When you can see that you're coming up short to pay your bills and living expenses, there's a few things that you can possibly do, okay? You can try to find ways to increase income or decrease expenses. We already went through several of those. One of the things that we bring up a lot in these workshops throughout the year that kind of goes hand in hand when I mentioned that idea that you may need to call your credit card company to help you reduce your interest rate. But the other thing is that I want you to have a good relationship with your bank. I don't think we go to the bank much these days. In fact, I work for a bank. I can't even tell you the last time I went to one of the branches. I can't remember. Okay, but the idea here is that if you have a good relationship with the branch manager or even just the folks that work in your local branch, if you have trouble, um, maybe you're going to go negative in your account and you want to avoid a non-sufficient funds fee when you pay a check or whatever. The idea here is that the folks that work at your local financial institution are there to help you. They might waive some fees for you. You might need a cashier's check to pay something because of an emergency. Some banks are charging $50 for those these days. If you have a good relationship with your banker, they might waive that because um because they know you. Tom walks in, they know Tom because I don't know. The idea here is that you can contact your creditors to help you out. You can go to your local branch folks if you need help. Okay. Now, what happens if we went through all of those resources and contacts? Well, we may have to ask help from a family member. We may have to ask help from friends. You never know. Okay. But there's also organizations that have programs that might be helpful to you as well. Something like Home Again LA, financial literacy workshops that we do. Maybe you get some information out of some of the workshops that we do that can maybe help you kind of avoid pitfalls in the future if they ever come up as well. There's also credit counseling agencies that you might be able to go to get help. Nonprofit organizations have services for you that are often either discounted or completely free to help you uh, when times are tough. Okay. But let's talk about actual prioritization real quick. Making sure that you're paying the things that you need to pay in full, partially or late, because you can rank order some things that may not be as um, important as others. But you want to pay particular attention to consequences like preventing you from earning income or jeopardizing your shelter, impacting your family's health, things like that. That's why we want to prioritize um, what we're going to pay first, because I'd much rather pay my rent than pay some other thing because I have to have a roof over my head, for example, right? Um, anyway, so we want to do these things as a rank order to prioritize what the expenses are. And there is a nifty participant guide, apply it section that's going to help with this prioritization. Now, I don't think we have I'll verbally explain it because I don't think we have the chart. No, we don't have the chart. So let me explain this before we wrap up for this workshop. Essentially, I'd like you to check this part of the participant guide out because it'll help you better prioritize between things like, okay, I've got to pay my rent this month, my phone bill, the streaming apps, the subscriptions I have, so on and so forth. So what you're going to see in the participant guide for this section is a chart. The chart is going to be laid out as follows. The bills or expense that you have. The first example in the participant guide is a phone bill. The next part is going to be the amount that's due. In this case, the person's phone bill is 50 bucks. The next thing is going to be the due date. In this case, the due date is January 5th. Okay. And then the next part is if you need help with that expense, yes or no. And then it's going to say, what will happen if I don't pay that in full? So we're using the phone as an example, right? If you don't pay it, you could incur a late fee, your service might be cut off, right? And then there's a priority number that you can assign it. So essentially, what I want you to do in this section is I want you to get all of your expenses, which are going to be easy because you're going to get them from your spending plan. You're then going to fill out that part of the participant guide on what the dollar amount is, what the due date is. If you need to speak to whatever service provider or creditor it is, if you've asked for help, what would happen if you didn't pay it in full? And then we're going to assign a priority number. The priority number you're going to ascertain from reading that part of the participant guide here. Okay. Um, you put a one in the column for the bill or the expense that's most serious, and then so on and so forth. Two is second most serious. Okay. But you can check this out in the participant guide. And then that way, if money is short, you could rank prioritize those things so that you know what is more important to pay and then what you can kind of hold off on a paying. Okay. But that brings us to the end of our workshop. Okay. That is my spending and savings plan. Section two, key takeaway, prioritizing which bills to pay first when money is short. But I would say key takeaways for the topic in general is remembering kind of those key terms that we kind of talked about, which is identifying what are those income and expenses, uh, creating a spending and savings plan so that you can identify what they are so that you can make adjustments, right? Tracking them on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis so that you have the information necessary to make those adjustments, right? And then based on that plan, you can kind of understand. Because remember, if you end up doing it and you don't have enough income to cover the expenses, then you have a shortfall. Then we slide into the takeaway from section two, which is prioritizing those things that need to be paid in rank order of most seriousness, right? Um, and then the other item that we take away from it is just kind of better planning and understanding because once you write down, especially those other key terms that we went over, needs and wants, very important key terms, that if we can eliminate things from the want column, then we can add money back in our pocket, and that ends up increasing our income, right? So those are kind of the key takeaways. I hope this was useful. We have another topic that we're going to cover in 2 weeks.
It's the
Uh,
21st.
yeah, so I hope that was helpful. I wish everyone a happy new year.
Thank you. You too.
Yeah,
Alrighty.
so
Well,
I'll
thank
see
you
you
so much,
guys
Tom.
next time.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, Tom. Take care.
All right, take care, Lisa.
Bye.
Bye.